Looking at a new indictment of an ex-Philadelphia fraud investigator, also a sitting council member's grandson who has just been indicted for taking bribes, Jeffrey Blackwell, once investigated fraud for the city. He has now been charged with perpetrating fraud himself. Former Texas mayor has been arrested again, along with 3 other officials. The mainstream media was trying to defend the mayor by attacking the local sheriff. They tried to smear the local sheriff, saying that she was driven by a right-wing anti-government agenda, and the sheriff was intimidating Democrats and Latinos by looking into this corruption. Homeland Security and FBI agents arrested Dr. Asha Tribble earlier today. Tribble was a high-ranking administrator at FEMA, and it looks like their website actually tried to remove Tribble's bio. It is interesting that they include a quote about former President Obama in the bio and Tribble's connection to Obama. Looking here at a recent indictment of yet another Democrat politician, Councilman Andy King, facing disorderly conduct, harassment, and other charges. And even more recent article talking about how he's continuing the very sort of behavior that he was recently indicted for. Here he is with Mayor Bill de Blasio. It's also interesting that Andy King was a huge supporter of Hillary Clinton in the last election. Jaziel Correa has just been arrested again, is the most recent update from today, for taking cash bribes this time. Correa was an up-and-coming name for the Democrat Party. He was elected as the youngest mayor of Fall River at 23 years old, pictured here with Elizabeth Warren. And just in the last couple of weeks, he tried to crash this city council meeting.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor?
We just allow people.
Is there a reason you're just walking on the council floor uninvited? You can go sit back down in the audience, please. Mr. Mayor, we're in the middle of a discussion.
Mr. President,
Mr. Mayor, sit back in the audience. You have not been invited to this table for discussion.
Mr.
Motion to recess. We're in recess.
Another guilty plea tied to one of Hillary Clinton's top contenders for running mate in 2016. Mayor Kasem Reed was one of Hillary Clinton's top potential vice presidential candidates during her failed campaign in 2016, pleading guilty in this bribery case. Hillary Clinton was a huge supporter of the former president of Honduras, whose wife has just been sentenced a huge prison sentence, 58 years in jail. Another D.C. Transit Board rep has resigned after lying to protect a close friend of Bill and Hillary Clinton. This was D.C.'s only remaining WMATA board member, resigning in the wake of this ethics scandal against Jack Evans. Jack Evans is a long supporter of Bill and Hillary Clinton. He was the D.C. co-chair of Hillary Clinton's 2008 campaign. More updates on this trial in federal court against a top Democrat known for his close ties to Bill and Hillary Clinton. Jerry Lundergan reportedly left $20,000 in a consultant's couch, inside the couch of a political consultant. That's among the most recent updates on Lundergan, who was a fixture, they note, in Democrat circles for decades, having served as party chairman in addition to being a state representative. An update here as multiple officials are learning their punishment for a public corruption scheme. Wanda Green being sentenced to 7 years in prison. They were saying that she could have been facing 33 years, potentially. Wanda Green, pictured here. Interesting, as somebody else involved in the same case, Mandy Stone, was sentenced to 33 months today. Wanda Green's son also sentenced now. Wanda Green worked with Ellen Frost, the Black Mountain Democrat, to use more than $575,000 of public funds on personal activities in North Carolina and elsewhere, according to an 11-count federal indictment. Multiple FBI raids taking place, one at the township home of the president of the United Auto Workers, Gary Jones. It's interesting that this is happening as part of a wider investigation into corruption in the auto industry. It's the former New York Fed president, Bill Dudley, is pictured here. He is encouraging his one-time colleagues at the Fed to sway the 2020 election, to influence the 2020 election against President Trump by not cutting rates further. President Trump has been calling out the many problems with the Federal Reserve and has taken on the Federal Reserve chairman. It's really escalated recently. In just the past week, he went as far as calling the Federal Reserve chairman, Jerome Powell, a bigger enemy possibly to the U.S. than the Chinese president. It's also interesting that this is coming just as Jacob Rothschild's apparently making comments about the stock market being on thin ice. And while he does not name President Trump specifically, it does seem like he is hinting again that because he's not getting his way politically recently, Jacob Rothschild, with these many political movements that are going up against these globalist policies that Rothschild and others have been pushing. Got some big news from today that Justin Trudeau has been found guilty of breaking federal ethics law. This is a report from the ethics commissioner determining this. Andrew Scheer is the leader of the Conservative Party commenting on this, saying that Justin Trudeau said he would be accountable and ethical. Instead, he used the power of his office to reward his supporters and punish his critics. He is now the only prime minister in history to be found guilty of breaking federal ethics law not once but twice. Looking here at another big indictment of another influential Democrat, the former mayor of Palm Springs, this California Democrat, Mayor Punier, along with two developers that were also involved in this bribery case, have been indicted. Recent update just from this week talking about the ex-Palm Springs mayor, Steve Punier. Now there's another picture here. One picture here of the Democrat mayor with Chelsea Clinton. Okay, looking here at another new guilty verdict from this week involving two of the top aides to a well-known Democrat mayor, pictured here in 2015 with Hillary Clinton. So just this week, two of his top aides to Mayor Marty Walsh in Boston, have just had a guilty verdict against them in a conspiracy case. They've been convicted of conspiracy and another of extortion as well. Okay, another influential member of the Democrat Party has just pleaded guilty, facing 45 years in prison, potentially facing 45 years behind bars. Scott Maddox was the former chair of the Democrat Party in Florida, just pleaded guilty in this corruption probe. They are saying, however, that it is far from certain that the public corruption probe has ended. So they're hinting, I guess, combined with the plea deal from Maddox, that he could be giving more information on other well-known Democrats connected to the case. Okay, so another corrupt Democrat is going to prison. Pictured here is ex-Philly Sheriff John Green, who has just gotten 5 years in a federal corruption case. Secret text messages that further expose the UK and MI5's role in this whole Russiagate fiasco. Very early on, the UK played a major role. This is something that people have been talking about. President Trump has said that has released several documents in the UK. He's already released several documents. The UK recently, in the past few months, was begging President Trump not to declassify more documents about the Russia investigation. I wonder why. Okay, another corrupt politician who was described as an up-and-coming, can't-miss rising star of the Democrat Party, said that he was a can't-miss candidate to be the next Democrat mayor of Providence, has just pleaded guilty. He's had his political career ruined as a result in a short period of time. He's gone from being council president to now felon Councilman Aponte, Luis Aponte, is a Democrat, has pleaded guilty. He's been forced to resign in disgrace as a result. Another picture from court of Aponte today. He's pleaded no contest to these embezzlement charges. Multiple criminal charges against this Democrat, Darian Moy, who's running now for a seat on the Forest County Board of Supervisors, or at least he was trying to do that before he was told that he was disqualified because he's a felon and all of these other criminal charges, some of them very serious. They break them down here, involving two missing girls at one point that were found at his residence in July of 2011. Okay, bad news today for a corrupt Democrat governor who recently threatened President Trump, saying that he was going to punch President Trump in the mouth. That was Puerto Rico Governor Ricardo Rosario. Is currently facing tons of protests of his own constituents in Puerto Rico, and a judge has just ordered for the governor to surrender his phone, his cell phone, along with other officials amid this wide-ranging corruption scandal. A close friend of the former mayor of Scranton, this is Democrat Bill Courtwright. You can see him here in 2016 at a campaign event for Hillary Clinton. He has faced these recent federal corruption charges. He just resigned earlier this month. So that was some recent news before this second arrest that has just been announced. Another person involved in the same pay-to-play scheme. Courtwright himself, the actual mayor, is scheduled to be sentenced on November 14th. He's facing a maximum of 35 years in prison. A watchdog organization, Judicial Watch, has announced that it has hand-delivered an ethics complaint to the House chairman of the U.S. House of Representatives office, calling for a full investigation into potential crimes tied to allegations that Democrat Congresswoman Ilhan Omar may have married her biological brother. Looking at what looks like some more possible bad news for Democrats after an FBI raid in LA. The FBI raided both City Hall and LA's Department of Water and Power with sealed federal search warrants. Democrats are freaking out today after a Democrat judge was dragged away in court after being sentenced to jail time. Tracy Hunter, pictured here today, she was convicted of using her position to illegally help a family member. She was ordered to be taken into custody, sparking outrage from her supporters. Other Democrats. This is following a new guilty plea by a mayor in New York, pictured here with Hillary Clinton. He actually previously campaigned for Hillary Clinton as well. Mount Vernon Mayor Richard Thomas was elected in 2015. Facing these charges, he's actually just pleaded guilty earlier this month over corruption, grand larceny charges. Okay, another Democrat politician is going to prison. This is Kelvin Atkinson, who was the former Senate Majority Leader in Nevada, pictured here at court. He had resigned in March, and then we're just learning now, this article from yesterday, saying that he is going to prison. Kelvin Atkinson misused hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign funds. Okay, pictured here is Nikki Grigsby, who's just been arrested after an FBI raid was conducted at Muncie Sanitary District offices. This is in Indiana. It's one of two arrests. Peru's ex-president has just been arrested in the U.S. He was arrested in California on extradition orders. That's Alejandro Toledo, former president of Peru. He's pictured here with Bill Clinton. There's been a lot of strange things that have happened with this case. There's connections to the Clinton Foundation and the World Bank. And just recently, another former president of Peru, pictured here with Hillary Clinton, also involved in the same case, died in hospital after shooting himself in a police raid. Okay, recent update here about a federal grand jury indictment against a former Buncombe County Democrat, Ellen Frost. She was county commissioner. This is in North Carolina. She's been indicted on 11 counts as part of this very strange case. She also, it seems like, tried to use an airport in Asheville to cover up this whole scheme as well, where money was going to this equestrian venue. Courtwright himself, the actual mayor, is scheduled to be sentenced on November 14th. He's facing a maximum of 35 years in prison and a $750,000 fine. Pictured here are two failed candidates from the Democrat Party, Andrew Gillum, who lost the race for governor in Florida, and of course Hillary Clinton, who lost the race for president in 2016. This is interesting as Gillum is currently under investigation by both the FBI and other federal authorities. Just about the last hour, saying that acting DHS Secretary Kevin McAleenan is under federal investigation for alleged leaks. This is having to do with an immigration operation that was supposed to be happening. A Democrat judge from Texas that has just been found guilty on all counts, very serious bribery charges. Jury convicted this ex-judge, Democrat judge from Texas, for bribery, conspiracy, travel act violations, and obstruction charges. This is the actual press release from the Department of Justice. The FBI has made more arrests in the Puerto Rico corruption scandal, something that President Trump has called out for a long time now. In the mainstream media, oddly, one Washington Post article I'm going to look at is almost framing this like these arrests are a bad thing because this is sort of a win for President Trump. Talking about the FBI making arrests in this Puerto Rico corruption scandal, prompting calls for the governor to quit. They're asking him to resign and raising concerns over billions of dollars, they say, in storm aids. Okay, starting with a photo here of DC Council member Jack Evans with former President Bill Clinton. Evans has just had his home raided by the FBI, interestingly. Okay, getting your reaction. Breaking news in the last hour that Keith Raniere, leader of NXIVM, has been found guilty on all counts in this sex cult case. Other members of NXIVM also involved, of course, Claire Bronfman, who was one of the main people funding this sex slave organization involved in human trafficking. The father of Claire Bronfman is Edgar Bronfman. They own Seagram's, and they are close friends of the Clintons. But yet another mainstream article going back to 2007, I've referenced several times, talking about a $30,000 donation from New York Post, 2007. Hillary's $30,000 fans are her cult following, talking about the Albany-based NXIVM group. Okay, we have another update from today about another unusual death. Here is Mohamed Morsi. He was the former president of Egypt. Here he is in 2012 with Hillary Clinton, pictured here. Article from 2012 talking about Clinton's visit to Egypt. Very strange events with the Egyptian ex-president. Morsi died, according to reports, during trial. He collapsed and died. This is just being reported in the last hour. We're talking here about another event about the Clintons, a Broadway play about the Clintons that is ending early due to poor ticket sales. And this is separate from a different tour that the actual Clintons went on. I covered before. You may have seen it elsewhere, where they had these terrible ticket sales. The real life Hillary and Bill Clinton went on a 13-city speaking tour, and there were tons of empty seats. This was the opening night in Toronto. People covered that at the time. Looking at this article on a new report from this week, based on info from the State Department pointing out that 15 people, at least 15 people, however, did break rules in mishandling Hillary Clinton emails. Looking at to get your opinions, your thoughts on the passing of Gloria Vanderbilt. This was a member of the very wealthy Vanderbilt family. Gloria is also the mother of CNN anchor Anderson Cooper. Interesting news update from today saying that the Obama administration quietly deleted over 12 years of ICE speeches on the immigration crisis, and this coincidentally took place just hours before President Trump was inaugurated. Okay, looking at a headline here saying that another organization run by John Podesta is failing, completely collapsing. John Podesta, of course, Hillary Clinton's former campaign manager, ran her failed campaign. Then you had the Podesta group completely collapsing in late 2017. Okay, looking at an interesting article here talking about a new person running for Senate, Democrat. Jamie Harrison will be running to replace a well-known Senator Lindsey Graham, who, interesting, Lindsey Graham, a long history in the Senate, but does seem like some of his opinions have been sort of shifting. He seemed to be supporting Donald Trump more. Seems to be kind of a shift, a pretty major shift since the passing of John McCain as well, kind of with Lindsey Graham, but probably not good news for Democrats that Mueller says that he is resigning in his role as special counsel. He will be resigning from the DOJ. He's saying that he won't testify against Donald Trump, which is something that Jerry Nadler and other Democrats were trying to set up. Okay, so I just wrote out this post on my blog, Reality Reader, talking about John Podesta and him panicking again. He's freaking out at President Trump yet again. Meanwhile, at the same time, he's scheming with two former CIA officials from the same event. Again, he spends over half of it criticizing the president and demanding more censorship online of his political opponents. Meanwhile, using the guise of Russia, this so-called Russian interference, this whole narrative that he's been pushing, further pushing it with, again, two former CIA agents here that are members of Congress. Okay, looking at this news, it looks like this Utah judge likely regrets making these anti-Trump comments. Looks like he spent more time criticizing the president than doing his job as a judge, both online and even in court. He regularly criticized the president. Number of online posts they reference. This Utah judge has now been suspended without pay. Okay, interesting news here today saying that a lawyer who had formerly argued that Hillary Clinton could be indicted over her email scandal has now become a federal judge. Okay, a corrupt Georgia County Democrat has just been arrested by the FBI, as reports just breaking in the last few hours, talking about a former DeKalb County Commissioner, Sharon Barnes Sutton. Her arrest, feds charged now ex-DeKalb Commissioner with taking bribes, extortion, other charges. Sharon Barnes Sutton, pictured here, a Democrat, is the District 4 representative of DeKalb County Board of Commissioners. Interesting update on the still unsolved murders of two Canadian billionaires who had donated money to the Clinton Foundation initiatives in Haiti and other countries. Some interesting new updates today talking about UK spies and their role in spying on President Trump and the phony dossier, the relation to that, this dossier that was backed by Hillary Clinton and the DNC, the illegal spying against President Trump, people in the DOJ trying to protect Hillary Clinton and the FBI. Okay, another Democrat resigning and facing more charges. Democrat mayor of a northern New Jersey town just said that he is resigning after he was charged with election ballot violations. Okay, another resignation and indictment today of St. Louis County Executive Steve Stenger. He was running his recent re-election campaign entirely based off of being anti-Trump, and people were pointing out how this was odd at the time. Even his primary campaign that was supposed to be against a fellow Democrat, Steve Stenger, is a Democrat. He made his whole St. Louis primary not about actual local issues or anything. He just took it as an opportunity to attack President Trump. So Bart Chilton was a political appointee of former President Bill Clinton, and he also worked for the Obama administration as well as the Bush administration. There's a new announcement this week saying that Bart Chilton is now dead at 58 years old. This is after a sudden illness. Judge Joseph has been indicted, news from today, on federal charges. She's been indicted on obstruction of justice. Joseph is accused of preventing immigration officers from taking custody of an illegal immigrant after the immigrant appeared in her courtroom on state charges, saying this Massachusetts judge and court officer had been indicted on federal charges of helping an illegal immigrant sneak out of the back of a courthouse to evade arrest by federal immigration officials. The FBI, the IRS, and other federal agents are raiding Baltimore Mayor Catherine Pugh's homes and Baltimore City Hall. Catherine Pugh, a Democrat, mayor of Baltimore, is involved in a ongoing scandal, and it has to do with contributions to her campaign and a children's book as well. She received $500,000 related to this. Now, news leading into this just from yesterday, 3 aides to the mayor have been fired, and now the governor is calling on the Baltimore mayor to resign. Looking at a press release that was just posted on the Department of Justice's website, former State Department employee pleads guilty to conspiring with foreign agents, posted today, April 24th, saying Candace Marie Claiborne, a former employee of the U.S. Department of State, pleaded guilty today to a charge of conspiracy to defraud the United States by lying to law enforcement and background investigators and hiding her extensive contacts with and gifts from agents of the People's Republic of China, the PRC, in exchange for providing them with internal documents from the U.S. State Department. It's a big press release just released from Judicial Watch saying, breaking, Judicial Watch announced today that a senior FBI official admitted in writing and under oath that the agency found Clinton email records in the Obama White House, specifically the executive office of the president. There's a recent picture here of Algeria's richest man, Issad Rabrab, extremely wealthy billionaire from Algeria, with French President Emmanuel Macron. And this is a recent picture. This one is from January of this year, just the end of January. And there's a major update, some bad news for Issad Rabrab, Macron's friend here. He has just been arrested. He is one of 5 Algerian billionaires arrested. This is the news just from today, April 22nd, 2019. 5 Algerian billionaires arrested as part of a corruption investigation. There have been some major updates. Allison Mack pleading guilty in the Nexium sex slave case just in the last few weeks. Allison Mack was an actress from Smallville who was arrested some months ago. She tried to recruit other people in Hollywood into the cult. She approached other actresses like Emma Watson and Kelly Clarkson. There's a story from today here saying that it's talking about UK police. They had to open fire at a car that tried to ram the Ukrainian ambassador's vehicle in London. So that's an update from today. Now, finally, one name that ties into all this, working with the Podesta brothers, to ex-Obama aide Greg Craig. They've just announced that he has been indicted in a investigation related to this Mueller probe. Headline here says, Bill Clinton honoree thrown in jail over, quote, biggest clean energy scam in American history. Got several outlets, some mainstream outlets also, surprisingly, talking about this as well. Co-founder of bogus green energy firm gets jail time for $54 million Ponzi scheme. And this corporation was promoted by Bill Clinton and the Clinton Global Initiative. Looking at some interesting news from this week, report here saying that Duke University has been forced to pay out $112 million after they faked lab research. This was a $112 million payout to settle this lawsuit that was brought by a whistleblower who also received a large payout as part of this $112 million. The person who brought this scandal to authorities, New York Mayor Democrat Bill de Blasio. It's involved in a couple major controversies right now. I want to look at a couple of articles here talking about two major programs this article is focusing on, one headed by de Blasio and one by his wife, pictured here. This article is pointing out that they have wasted $1.8 billion of taxpayer money combined between these two programs, and about $850 million was wasted by de Blasio's wife, who can't account for the majority of this money. Looking at some details on this news from this week, saying that Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, it's a new FEC complaint that's been filed against Ocasio-Cortez, claiming that she illegally paid her boyfriend through a PAC that was working for her. This is what they're saying. Trudeau's Liberal Party took bribes from SNC-Lavalin, and that was after another $48 million bribery scandal that goes back to Libya. So these were donors to Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party, and it looks like the allegation is, at least, this is going back over a week now, and there's been one major resignation last week. The former Justice Minister that was appointed by Trudeau was very silent on this issue. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau facing his fifth ethics investigation involving his cabinet in less than 4 years as Prime Minister. So official speaking for Bill Clinton has just said that he's canceled his planned trip to Nigeria. This is, they're saying that the reason that they've given is that he does not want his visit to be politicized, and likely has something to do with some pretty dramatic statements that one state governor in Nigeria said sounded like a not so veiled threat against Clinton or other people meddling or interfering in these elections. One state governor during the week threatened that any external actors, Clinton likely included here, who tried to intervene in the elections and in the internal affairs of the country would return home in body bags. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is involved in another major scandal, just escalating this week after reports that the Prime Minister's office ordered the former Canadian Justice Minister not to prosecute a Canadian company that was involved in a $48 million bribery scheme. Hi, everyone. This is Kip Simpson. I run this channel here on YouTube. Back in 2013, a member of my family was brutally murdered by this woman. On screen, you can see here, Sharon Boksh. She killed my step-great-grandmother, stabbing her 149 times. Now, after just 33 months behind bars, she's getting an outrageously early release. It's another update today related to this ongoing major money laundering scandal in Malaysia's 1MDB case. It's a lot of ties back to the entertainment industry, back to the Obama administration, other business people in the US as well. This is $4.5 billion at least that was stolen from Malaysian taxpayers. Goldman Sachs is also central in this whole scandal. The current CEO of Goldman Sachs has apologized. He's saying that he's sorry for this stolen $4.5 billion. Okay, pictured here is former Atlanta Mayor Kasem Reed with Hillary Clinton at a campaign event. Mayor Reed, or the former mayor, is currently has a number of staffers that are facing corruption charges, and there have been investigations that go into the mayor as well. That actually, Kasem is involved in some of these investigations. Former deputy chief of staff to the former Atlanta mayor collapsed in court. That's what sources are saying. She collapsed after she had been told that she was getting a 2-year sentence in prison, and she was told that she has to pay $15,000 in restitution after pleading guilty to a corruption charge. A headline here says Leonardo DiCaprio is testifying to a federal grand jury related to the Malaysian fund probe. I'm looking at news here on two politicians, two Democrats that have been recently indicted. One, Gabe Leland of Detroit, he is possibly headed to prison. He was indicted in October, and then now just today, the most recent update, they are trying to get him to leave office. They're trying to force him out of office early. The Democrats ran a Russian bot false flag operation in a race in Alabama, and the mainstream media went along with it. Many mainstream media outlets fell for it. They're saying that they were tricked, but it should have been pretty obvious at the time, even, that something was wrong with these so-called bots. December 12th, 2018, there's a new headline today talking about FBI indictments that have just dropped on Paige Carter Smith and Scott Maddox. Carter Smith has resigned, they're also saying, from the Downtown Improvement Authority. On this release, they're saying Paige Carter Smith is stepping down from her position as executive director of the Downtown Improvement Authority in light of a federal indictment naming her and her former boss and close friend, City Commissioner Scott Maddox. And this investigation was also an issue for Andrew Gillum, who was running in the midterms in Florida and was one of the races that ended up being in a recount that some people accused the Democrats of trying to steal these important races. December 12th, 2018, I wanted to look at some new updates about this new investigation into the Clinton Foundation. There have recently been a number of important whistleblowers that have come forward, some of them with thousands of documents, and now they're saying 3 Clinton Foundation whistleblowers are set to testify about tax crimes, pay for play, other wrongdoing by the Clinton Foundation with Shakira and Bill Clinton. This is at an event for the Clinton Global Initiative. Meanwhile, Shakira is about to be formally accused by prosecutors of defrauding the Spanish government out of nearly 15 million euros. Political operative had been convicted. It's just been convicted of federal campaign finance crimes in 2 congressional campaigns and of obstructing an investigation by Federal Election Commission. So this individual, Kenneth Smuckler, they say here worked with another individual who was a Clinton staffer as well. This section from the DOJ release names this same individual, a second person who had just recently been convicted in the same case. Her name, Carolyn Cavanis. In 2012, they say Smuckler, who the DOJ is just saying has been convicted today. Smuckler in 2012 engaged in a conspiracy to make a concealed payment of $90,000 to congressional candidate and former Philadelphia municipal judge Jimmy Moore to get Judge Moore to drop out of the primary election race. Mazen Faruqi and a third individual had been charged. This major fraud case, an $8 billion contract signed off by Obama. So they talk about the contract, but the Clinton connection, Daily Caller article from 2013, they talk about the Faruqis being major donors to several top Democrats from this week, saying that a former Venezuelan national treasurer is sentenced to 10 years in prison. He'll be sentenced spending 10 years in a U.S. prison for a money laundering conspiracy involving over $1 billion in bribes. Press release reads, a former Venezuelan national treasurer was sentenced today for his role in a $1 billion currency exchange and money laundering scheme. Assistant Attorney General for the Justice Department's Criminal Division and other officials made this announcement this week. They've announced that the brother of the president of Honduras has been arrested in the U.S. in Miami on a number of different charges, including drug trafficking charges. Well, there's been another important update since Brenda Snipes resigned over the weekend. Broward County Election Supervisor Brenda Snipes, I had talked about over the weekend. She had resigned. She was the subject of a lot of criticism for her mishandling of the midterms and was the center of a number of scandals before then. One case where she had illegally destroyed ballots for a race won by Debbie Wasserman Schultz. The Florida Democrat Party is under criminal investigation. They're saying Florida officials are investigating possible election fraud and use. This is involving the use of altered forms by Democrats. From the UK, about a fake psychiatrist, a bogus doctor, they're saying, that has prompted an investigation into another 3,000 doctors, another 3,000 foreign doctors going to have background checks after this fake doctor was exposed. And even more unusual is that this psychiatrist had been jailed for 5 years for trying to defraud a pensioner. Department of Justice is announcing this week that a Queens immigration attorney named Andrea Dumitru has been found guilty of operating a massive asylum fraud scheme. This is involving over 100 asylum applications where she made false statements and representations. It's also this is following up on another pretty major case with the same woman, the same attorney pictured here, Andrea Dumitru, had also been recently found guilty in helping her partner, called the Taxi King, her business partner, steal more than $5 million in state taxes. People are continuing to look at a lot of evidence of voter fraud in these midterm elections, and there have been a few different arrests related to voter fraud recently. It's one fairly recent major arrest of 9 people in a Texas voter fraud ring. And there have been some other major arrests this week. An arrest in Peru, police chief among those arrested, and 13 others over what has been described as a baby trafficking ring. Being pictured here is David Pomfret of Barclays Bank. He's listed as the associate vice president at Barclays, alongside his wife, Anne Marie Pomfret, who had recently been found dead. David has, they're reporting today, been arrested. Now, just in the last few hours, they're now saying that the top Barclays banker, Pomfret, has been arrested over the murder of his wife, Marie, who lived for dressage before she was found with serious head injuries in remote stables in Cheshire. So she was found in these horse stables. Saying that Eric Schneiderman, the former New York Attorney General, a Democrat, he is dodging criminal charges for these alleged violent sexual encounters, and it does sound like he's gotten, off the hook. He has said that this does not mean that he did not do anything wrong here, and even the judge or the person overseeing the case has said that they believe the women, but due to legal complications, the case will not go forward. The cardiologist for former President George H.W. Bush was killed in a drive-by shooting while riding his bike near the Houston Medical Center. It's been reported this week that a Ugandan senior police officer named Mahmoud Okello has died while in transit. Now, this marks the 3rd death of a Ugandan diplomat from the same ministry that has happened recently. All these deaths happening on a plane while traveling for work. Another official from the Ministry of Internal Affairs recently died on a plane this week. Coordinator of the National Focal Department on Small Arms and Light Weapons Department in the Internal Affairs Ministry, Commissioner of Police Akello Makmut, July 11th, 2018. Reports first came out late last night about the body of a woman. A woman's dead body had been found inside a trash compactor at a luxury Manhattan apartment. This apartment building was the previous residence of disgraced former Congressman Anthony Weiner and his former wife, one of Hillary Clinton's top aides, Huma Abedin. Now, he is one of the individuals that had been leading a private investigation into the murder of former DNC staffer, former staffer at the Democratic National Committee, Seth Rich. They know that people were speculating that there was some link between the murder and the DNC. Looking at emails, WikiLeaks emails, John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's former campaign manager, talking about making examples of potential whistleblowers in the party. Rich was then shot and killed on July 10th, 2016. So Jack Berkman did hire private investigators. Now he's saying that he will present a witness about this case who will bring us closer to the resolution of the murder of Seth Rich. New Zealand over the weekend, saying that the widow of a former politician is now saying that her husband was a pedophile and part of a ring of abusers, which she says goes to the highest heights you can imagine. Yeah, there's some interesting theories circulating about this weird graphic that was posted on MSNBC. MSNBC aired this picture last night. That's before the midterms, which are supposed to be taking place today. And you can see they've already predicted the results. They have given some explanation, but just looking at a few details on the picture, they're saying that, so obviously this is over the race between Andrew Gillum and Ron DeSantis, and they're saying that Andrew Gillum won last night before Election Day. In the top right corner, you can see that they are saying that the race is too close to call, but they're reporting that the vote is 99% in already. Obviously not true. Now, they said that this was a test graphic, and some people were giving other explanations that don't exactly line up. Looking here at news of an incident that took place this morning, November 5th, 2018. The headline reads that an officer had been found dead in the garden of the French Prime Minister's residence. Looking here at the Twitter page for Christine Assange, that's the mother of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. She is retweeting this recent message just from a few hours ago, talking about a second break-in attempt at the Ecuadorian embassy where Julian Assange is still staying. Major developments today over this huge 1MDB scandal. I've covered this in some previous videos. They're announcing some more big charges, including the U.S. Has new charges against Joe Low. It's this fugitive Malaysian businessman. He's also has close links to several other politicians, business people. Some new reports this evening about Italian police. They're saying that they're investigating human remains that have been found at the Vatican's Rome embassy. There were reports of a major plane crash last night. It's now October 29th. Just in the last 12 hours, we had some major updates on this plane. Left Indonesia, crashed shortly after. They lost contact basically right after they took off, and now they're saying that of the 189 people that they've confirmed were on board, there were 20 Indonesian finance ministry officials. Pictured here is billionaire businessman Vichai Sriva Dhanaprabha. He's also the owner of Leicester City, team. They are just announcing that his helicopter has crashed. It's been engulfed in flames. There's a number of news outlets in Canada today talking about a new reward that's been offered for information over the murders of Barry and Honey Sherman. They are pharmaceutical billionaires, Canadian billionaire couple. They were murdered in their Toronto mansion last December. Some people may have heard some info on the murder of the Shermans. Now, it wasn't clear how they died originally. There were changing reports. Part of the reason that people were questioning different details of the death of the Shermans was the changing story from authorities, first saying that they weren't even looking for a suspect, implying that it was self-inflicted, the deaths. And since then, they have expanded the investigation. They said now they had been looking for a suspect, and now the family's trying to push for more info. What does everyone make of this news story from this morning? It's a pretty big potential news story. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be questioning the details about these 4 apparent explosive devices sent to Hillary Clinton, Obama, CNN offices. Correspondent John Brennan, formerly of the CIA at CNN, it sounds like it was specifically addressed to, and George Soros. Isn't it interesting that this article comes out today saying that the State Department, newly released emails from the State Department, are exposing a Clinton crony's pitch for an African company. It sounds like a conflict of interest through this company Symbion. So Hillary Clinton involved, possible bribery scandal. I want to take a look at this big new lawsuit. It's an article just posted late yesterday talking about these paid protesters. They're real, article admits. This is from a mainstream source, the LA Times, one of the many mainstream outlets that, of course, regularly characterized the president as a conspiracy theorist for bringing up the idea that these types of crowds even exist. Right after the election, and Donald Trump talked about the problem of fake crowds or paid protesters. It's one tweet from November 10th, 2016, saying just had a very open and successful presidential election. Now professional protesters incited by the media are protesting. Very unfair, calling them professional protesters. I'll also look at all of the professionally made identical signs paid for by Soros, Democrat backer, billionaire George Soros, and others. He's accused George Soros of paying these protesters, pointing out that all the professionally made identical signs, says that they're not made in the basement from love. They sound like they come from a PR firm, sounding exactly like the exact same type of PR firm that is being accused of this huge extortion scheme in this lawsuit. Crowds on Demand is the name of this particular PR firm that's facing this lawsuit, and they are refusing to affiliate themselves with any one party in particular. However, just looking at a few of their past people that they've worked with, people that have hired them in the past, Anthony Weiner, Democrat Anthony Weiner, today in a case against New York State Senate candidate John Mannion. He's a Democrat running for state Senate in New York. One of his staffers, a paid employee working for Mannion, had just been arrested. They're reporting today, just a couple of local Syracuse outlets currently reporting on the arrest of Daniel Darrigan. He's 24 years old. He's a paid campaign worker for the state Senate candidate John Mannion, a Democrat from New York. He's facing charges for forging a signature on a petition for the 50th Senate district seat. It's October 22nd, 2018. There was an interesting news story. It was posted over the weekend. The headline reads, 2 convicted Democrats seek political office while behind bars. It's talking about these 2 Democrats that are still running for office despite currently serving 2 separate jail terms. Showing a post here from Congressman Devin Nunes about an arrest that happened yesterday from a George Soros-backed Democrat. Devin Nunes, he says, quote, Soros-funded hack finally arrested for assaulting young female campaign staff in Nevada. This should not happen in the USA. Carmen Jeline Cruz is the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico. She's been a major critic of President Donald Trump. Earlier last month, September, this feud between the two escalated. Carmen Jeline Cruz accused the president of being delusional, paranoid, and unhinged from any sense of reality after he questioned some of the claims by Puerto Rico's government. They sabotaged efforts as well, and there is some evidence of that Puerto Rican government potentially sabotaging relief efforts. Donald Trump thought that it was to make him look bad. It was done by the Democrats. Today, Carmen Jeline Cruz, mayor of San Juan, has had this ongoing feud with President Trump. Her offices have been raided by the FBI. Headline just from 2 hours ago saying FBI raids San Juan city offices weeks after Trump alleges corruption. It's October 13th, 2018. There's some news here from this weekend saying that 4 women have been indicted in a North Texas voter fraud ring. This article saying that an assistant that had been accused of a $1.2 million wine theft formerly worked for a Goldman executive. They are saying has jumped to death. They're calling it a suicide from the Carlisle Hotel where he was staying. Startup executive is found dead in his apartment. This was executive, the COO of Money.net, which was one of the main competitors of Bloomberg Limited Partnership and Thomson Reuters as well. Founder of this Wall Street startup has been found dead at his West Village apartment. There's some more news that has come out just today about a crash, this limousine crash that happened over the weekend. The news released today a couple major updates. Maybe the most shocking update is that the owner of the limousine that crashed and killed 20 people may be in Pakistan. Sounds like he was a former FBI informant, according to officials. They believe that he's in Pakistan. Some new information coming out just today about an arrest that took place at Cher's mansion in Malibu last week. Just today, a news outlet has obtained a search warrant. One of the warrants for this arrest that was reported here was the headline from last week. They said Cher's mansion swarmed by police as they arrest man living at the home on drug charges. It was reportedly her assistant's son. Some people may have heard this news yesterday. I imagine most have heard about the different packages, several packages sent, letters to different politicians. There was poison sent yesterday. It was found in a letter to President Trump. Just a few days ago, there was another news story also involving the Pentagon. One doctor, Dr. Marion Jordan, 74 years old, he had treated, they say that he treated burn patients after 9/11 from the Pentagon, victims from the Pentagon, saying that he's being remembered after he was killed in a multi-vehicle crash September 27th, 2018. It's being reported today that a former state senator from Massachusetts who was awaiting trial on corruption charges has been found dead at his home. Fiscal Note is a software and media company based in Washington, D.C. Their chief of staff, Wendy Martinez, just being reported that she was stabbed to death. She was killed in a Logan Circle stabbing. Wendy Martinez, first, Fiscal Note. People may have heard of the company. It has started up fairly recently in the past few years. There are very close connections to political and business elite, including Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Now being reported that a key witness in a major casino fraud case was found dead in a creek in Pennsylvania over the weekend. Just being announced today by Judicial Watch, conservative watchdog group, is suing the DOJ for all records, all emails from Anthony Weiner's laptop. Well-known rapper known as Mac Miller died on Friday, September 7th, age 26. He was known for one of his most well-known songs from 2011 was about Donald Trump. It was a song actually seemed to be praising Donald Trump. Mac Miller has since criticized Trump after he started running for president, after it became unpopular to support Donald Trump. He said he regretted writing the song praising Trump previously. He's also known for his ex-girlfriend being Ariana Grande, Mac Miller's ex, Ariana Grande. People likely familiar with her. She's a fairly well-known pop musician. She recently sang at Aretha Franklin's funeral and was involved in, well, there was a scandal with Bill Clinton and pastor Bill Clinton, they say, was creepily staring at Ariana Grande. This was shared on Twitter. Checking her out during a funeral for Ariana Grande. Also, this pastor had apologized for groping Ariana Grande at the same event. So you're just starting to get some reports in the regular media about this missing WikiLeaks associate, Arjen Kampfus. WikiLeaks posted about this a couple of days ago, actually. Just over a day ago, WikiLeaks posted this on their Twitter, saying that Arjen Kampfus, associate of Julian Assange, WikiLeaks founder and author of Information Security for Journalists. He had disappeared, according to his friends and colleagues. He was last seen in Bodo. Okay, well, there's just been another death of yet another model, this one under very suspicious circumstances. This Australian model, reports are now saying, was mysteriously found dead on the back of a billionaire's super yacht. She's reportedly found hanging from a rope on the back of this boat. This was while it was in Greece. This is a boat, a super yacht that was owned by a Mexican billionaire who had attended fundraisers, paid to attend a fundraiser fairly recently with Bill Clinton. Some news that's just broken in the past hour. It's just been announced that an actress, Vanessa Marquez, she formerly worked on the television show ER. She was shot and killed by police a few hours ago. It's just being reported. Now, Vanessa Marquez, some people might remember her from both ER and some recent accusations that she made against George Clooney. This was just following the first stories about Harvey Weinstein about a year ago, as that scandal started to escalate. George Clooney, people had criticized him. Of course, George Clooney is a big backer of several well-known Democrats. He helped run fundraisers for Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and was friends with other Democratic donors such as Harvey Weinstein. So he did make a comment about the Harvey Weinstein scandal after Weinstein had been accused of rape by multiple women. George Clooney came out pretending to speak out about it, and people were saying that he was basically fake, given his relationship with Harvey Weinstein, that he likely knew about what was going on before. Some new updates over a plane crash that involved a wealthy family. A British tycoon was killed along with his entire family in a seaplane crash. We just learned that he left 41 million pounds to the charity Oxfam. One of the most recent major scandals that they had been involved in was a sexual misconduct scandal. It had been reported as in Haiti. Oxfam Great Britain had been banned from Haiti after this sex scandal, where members of Oxfam, including some high-ranking members from Oxfam that were unreported and went on to work at other charities, hired prostitutes in Haiti. Haiti said that they made the decision to ban the charity from the country because of its violation of its laws and serious breach of the principle of human dignity. So this pro basketball player, JJ Redick, made a disturbing claim on his podcast this week, saying that he saw a caged woman in the back of the New York City livery cab that had been arranged for him after a photo shoot for the fashion line Mr. Porter. NBA journeyman JJ Redick claimed that he freaked out after seeing a woman apparently being caged under a blanket in the back of his car. This was in the back of his car service in Manhattan, prompting him to jump out and call cops. Redick shared this story on his podcast Thursday, saying it happened Wednesday, just this week in New York, after he had done a photo shoot for the fashion line Mr. Porter. It's being reported today that Dr. Peter Fisher, who is the Queen's doctor, a homeopathy physician, he was killed while cycling in London. So this is the second prominent death of a well-known doctor in the past few weeks that had been killed while cycling. There was a former doctor for President George H.W. Bush. He had recently been killed also while cycling. 15th, 2018. Pictured here is the home of actor Will Smith. This is his $43 million mansion. This is near Malibu. Here you can see it's pictured on a map, and it's very close to several sites, slew of some very gruesome, serious crimes in Will Smith's neighborhood. Several sites right here you can see. Much of this is centered around the Malibu Creek State Park campground. So some people may have heard of one recent killing at this campground. It's been a series of events leading up to just the past few weeks. First, November 3rd, 2016, about a mile from where the more recent killing of Tristan Badet, the California scientist, killed this summer. Some people may have heard that he was shot. Before then, on November 3rd, 2016, James Rogers, another resident, was shot while sleeping in a hammock. He survived the attack but required surgery. Then on January 7th, 2017, at the Malibu Creek State Park campgrounds, so pictured here, Melissa Tatangelo was awakened in the middle of the night by what turned out to be a shotgun fired at her car at close range. At the same campground, some people may have heard of this death. I had covered the killing of California scientist Tristan Badet, June 22nd, 2018. The 35-year-old chemist was shot and killed while sleeping in a tent alongside his daughters 2 and 4. A plane crashed on Sunday. He's just been identified by authorities today as Scott Watson, who is a Disney Imagineer. This is one of the units at Disney that works on their theme parks. So he was flying solo, it was reported, and crashed in this field near the 5 freeway in Silmars, California. Well, it's August 11th, 2018. I was following this story late last night in real time as it was happening. The stolen plane, a stolen Bombardier Dash 8 Q400, was taken out of SeaTac Airport allegedly by an employee. Now the airport is also saying this as well. The airline, you can see the aircraft here, and there was some audio from the control tower as well of the man. They have still, at the time of this video, this update, not released the full name of the man that was flying this plane. You can see he's doing some pretty remarkable maneuvers with this plane. Even more remarkable given that the individual that went by Rich, according to the audio from the control tower, we don't have his full name other than he said that his name was Rich in the audio that was given. He is reportedly a ground service agent that stole the plane. It's followed here by an F-15 jet. Another question that people have, one of the main questions about what happened exactly last night, was whether the plane ended up crashing or if it was possibly shot down by these F-15s that were following it. Okay, there's news coming from London, Ontario. First two articles here, one posted today, one from yesterday. Yesterday, they were talking about the hearing. They were saying that this hearing looms for a London cop accused in a prostitution sting scandal. This hearing, they said, was upcoming just yesterday. They did an article, both this officer that had been arrested as part of this prostitution probe and the police cover-up. The head of the human trafficking unit, this is in Ontario, was also facing misconduct charges. This is the head of the human trafficking unit. Very worrying to see that he also faced misconduct charges, just announced this week, for allegedly ordering the release of this Waterloo cop that was swept up in this prostitution sting. And then the head of the human trafficking unit released him and tried to cover it up. It's just been breaking news in Ontario over the last few days. It's not being as widely reported as you would expect, a pretty big scandal. And then news today that the cop that was let go, it was linked to this prostitution probe that had been criminally charged. He died today. Suddenly, they are saying that there's no foul play expected. He was hit by a commercial truck, is what the Ontario police are saying. Waterloo regional police officer, this article reads, who retired just days after being charged following a London prostitution sting, was struck and killed by a big rig along Highway 401 Wednesday. We just found out more about this 1MDB scandal where billions of dollars were stolen from Malaysian taxpayers. The Prime Minister of Malaysia was arrested in that scandal as well. He's facing decades in prison. So starting this morning, there were reports that a SWAT team surrounded the suspect that was linked to the death of George H.W. Bush's former heart doctor. The suspect who died, this is the suspect, he has just died today. So this was the video released last week. You can see he's wearing this backpack on this recent news that broke following an inquiry into the abuse by convicted child abuser Bishop Peter Ball, along with his relationship with Prince Charles. Prince Charles defended the bishop and remained friends with him for several years and has made some pretty unbelievable claims, saying that he was misled into this continued friendship with the bishop. Yeah, well, you have a ton of different media sources just reporting this in the last hour. A lot of people probably weren't expecting to hear this at all, but apparently federal prosecutors are said to be investigating lobbyist Tony Podesta, Democratic lobbyist. He's the brother of John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's former campaign chairman. The former Obama aide, Bill Clinton aide. His brother, Tony Podesta, led the Podesta Group. They broke numerous foreign lobbying laws. Tom Weissum was an animator for a popular children's cartoon. He lived in Ottawa. It's just reports recently came out that he has officially been sent to prison on a number of charges, illegal images, sexual images that involved children were found on his computer. Over 60,000 images. He was charged with also sharing them online. This Ottawa artist who helped animate children's TV shows has been sentenced to 28 months in prison. He worked in TV productions such as My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, and Littlest Pet Shop. For a hyped luxury residential community that was proposed as a nuclear shelter, a shelter in case of a nuclear fallout for the elites, for the 1%. This is in Texas. So this has been in development, this residential community, and they are currently being investigated by the FBI. The owner allegedly agreed to launder Colombian drug money. 18, some people may have been pleased to hear this news today that the extremely corrupt and scandal-ridden company, this mining company, Glencore, had many scandals over the past several decades. They are facing some serious trouble now, both legally and financially. After the Department of Justice, the company announced that they had been subpoenaed by the Department of Justice over their work in Venezuela, Congo, the Congo and Nigeria. They said that they received the subpoena from the U.S. Department of Justice demanding that they hand over a decade's worth of records. So reports today that a man was arrested for threatening to kill Senator Rand Paul and chop up his family with an axe. There were reports released about this California scientist, Tristan Badet. He had been shot dead on a camping trip. He was with his two young daughters, 2 and 4 years old. May 4th, 2018. On Thursday, there's an interesting development in this ongoing case involving the alleged NSA leaker, reality winner. Now, she had pleaded guilty. She changed her plea from a not guilty plea to guilty on Thursday. So reports coming out today about a former Secret Service agent, author Gary Byrne. He's released several books about his experience with the Clintons. He's just filed a lawsuit against the Clintons, former campaign manager for Hillary Clinton, John Podesta, George Soros, also named in the lawsuit, David Brock of Media Matters, among many others. So this outspoken critic of the Clintons since he left the White House and their employ, he's filed this RICO lawsuit against former President Bill Clinton, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and a list of others. The nature of the suit, according to the filed documents, is racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations. Talking about this ongoing scandal. Now, this is a long-running scandal involving this company, Theranos. They are a privately held health technology company. They've been involved in this scandal for a long time. They made a number of false claims over their proprietary devices that they had made. They devised these, they said, revolutionary blood tests using very small amounts of blood. The technology was completely, did not work. The technology that they were using, there were a number of patients that were misdiagnosed by going through this company. They're being charged for fraud. They have connections to a lot of high-profile individuals. They had some major donors. Rupert Murdoch donated over $100 million. June 7th, 2018. People may have seen this news about Inez Zorreguieta. So 33 years old. She was a psychologist who worked for the Argentinian government. She was also the youngest sister of Queen Maxima of the Netherlands. She'd been found dead in her apartment in Buenos Aires of an alleged suicide. It's being described as she was found hanging in her apartment. So there were a number of known connections. Kirsten Gillibrand, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand's father, also lobbied for Raniere, the founder of this Nexium cult. Raniere had been arrested, recently accused of blackmailing members of the cult. The cult's been accused of human trafficking. They branded and threatened members. There's also a doctor that is being investigated for human experiments, illegal human experiments, that was working for the cult, was released. This was a list that was released a few days ago of over 90 companies that are linked to this Nexium cult. Recent news that a group of Canadians that have been affected by CIA brainwashing experiments, MK Ultra type experiments, they're asking for a public apology and compensation from the government. This is coming from the group Survivors Allied Against Government Abuse, and actions taken by the Trudeau government that have been criticized. People criticize Trudeau and his government for a gag order in this CIA brainwashing case. Say the flood is coming. New Comey McCabe emails suggest CNN and FBI coordination over Steele dossier. The article reads, several new strings have been tacked across the corkboard in the rapidly unraveling 2016 election scandal. Recently obtained FBI emails shed light on what appears to have been high-level coordination between the FBI and the cable news network CNN surrounding the release of the infamous Steele dossier. These emails, just these two exchanges, these emails alone, according to the president of Judicial Watch, should be enough for the Podestas to be hauled before a grand jury or worse. The fact that that has not happened, though the State Department has had this information, suggests that there is even more hypocrisy. It's further evidence of the known hypocrisy that is going on with the FBI and their treatment of the Trump witch hunt, people have described it as, and the complete pass that Hillary Clinton, Podesta, and others have received. We are talking about the Nexium cult, a couple of the most recent developments, and there's a pretty shocking development today about a Albany doctor who worked with Nexium. Brandon Porter, I believe, is the name. We can just briefly look at this article, one from New York Post. They talk about the fact that this doctor has been charged. He's linked to this Nexium cult. He was charged by the State Oversight Board with illegally conducting human experiments. It is alleged that the doctor forced members of this cult to watch disturbing rape and dismemberment videos for a fright study, is what he's described it as, that he was conducting. So he's just been charged. This is, again, all tying back to the Nexium cult. I'm sure people have heard at least something about this. There was this news that broke a few hours ago that President Trump's son-in-law and aide, Jared Kushner, was the target of an attempted, what could be an assassination attempt by Matthew Pilling. Was allegedly arrested. According to police, he tried to break into Trump International Hotel late Sunday. He was allegedly in possession also of a note saying that he intended to harm President Donald Trump's son-in-law and aide, Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner has a lot of critics. I've been a critic of Jared Kushner in the past as well, which is, of course, fine. But even a few weeks ago, there was an eyebrow-raising post from John Podesta, and people were questioning John Podesta in what he meant by this message. It appeared to be a threat, which some people think went too far against Jared Kushner. Again, this was just a few weeks ago. You had these comments from John Podesta. John Podesta tweeted out in reference to Jared Kushner saying, seems like those unnamed sources peddling secondhand hearsay with rank speculation that continue to leak inaccurate information came straight from 1600 Penn from the White House. Jared better start wearing his Kevlar on his back. The ex-IT staffer for the Democrats and House hacking suspect Imran Awan, his father had reportedly been involved in transferring data to the Pakistani government. This is according to an ex-business partner. Reportedly, 640 pounds of explosives had been stolen, we're being told, from a pipeline work site in Lancaster County. News recently of a 60-year-old Canadian humanitarian worker and former United Nations staff member who had been arrested in Nepal last week. He is under investigation for child sex crimes, according to police. Just a few hours ago, this was posted, this news that President Trump has just signed legislation which is aimed at penalizing website operators that facilitate online sex trafficking. This media reports from Reuters, they say, while chipping away at a legal protection for the technology industry. That's the media, it appears, kind of defending these tech companies. Now, this does sound like it's good news. The law is intended to make it easier for state prosecutors and sex trafficking victims to sue social media networks, advertisers, and others that kept exploitive material on their platforms. Missing U.S. government scientist has been found dead last night. Timothy Cunningham has been missing since February, and there's been some wide speculation across the internet about exactly what has happened to Timothy Cunningham. Now, he was found near the Chattahoochee River on Tuesday. This is of an apparent drowning that he had died from, although they're still going through a full autopsy. Now, there's some conflicting information. It's also further adding to some of this speculation, some of the questions people have about this death. We're hearing some different stories from the Atlanta Police Department, from Cunningham's work, and there's also been I guess in the alternative media, watchdog group Judicial Watch released a series of documents which revealed that the Obama administration spent $9 million colluding with George Soros in Albania. Then there's also this report, also posted today, that George Soros also made his first, on record at least, donation to a Oregon candidate. The current governor of Oregon, Kate Brown, received a $25,000 donation from George Soros. There's been a new batch of emails released by the United States Department of State. These are from former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Most of these messages have been heavily redacted. They include correspondence between several Clinton allies, including Huma Abedin, Cheryl Mills. Could be interesting. One from Linda Rothschild also included in this new batch. Another email from the same batch of messages showing Clinton directing her own State Department staff on which potentially secret email address to use in contacting Sidney Blumenthal. Sidney Blumenthal was banned from working in the department at the time. He'd been banned by then President Obama. A series of messages between Hillary Clinton, Tony Blair, as well as Linda Rothschild also. In these messages, Hillary Clinton is asking Rothschild for forgiveness, basically for Tony Blair missing a scheduled event with Rothschild. Hillary, in the same message, goes on to ask Linda Rothschild, "Let me know what penance I owe you." And there's another interesting coincidence surrounding the Clintons, more than a coincidence, possibly. Just days ago, hours ago, really, there was a fire that reportedly broke out at the compound in Chappaqua owned by Hillary and Bill Clinton. This was reported on January 3rd. Then just hours later, late last night, it was announced that the FBI is reportedly launching a new investigation into the Clinton Foundation and possible illegal activities by Hillary Clinton, additional pay-to-play schemes. Wanted to take a closer look at two recent events. First, this week's news that a cousin of Huma Abedin, who partnered with someone who has been called the Russian Donald Trump, they've been convicted of fraud as well as tampering with the case by deleting emails. So this cousin of Huma Abedin did a $500 million deal with a man known as the Russian Donald Trump. He'd been convicted of fraud on Tuesday, and the judge ordered him jailed immediately, saying he had demonstrated a, quote, disdain for the courts and legal process and was a flight risk. In my last video, I was talking about this executive order that was signed by President Trump on Thursday, which launched a new sanctions regime targeting human rights abusers and corrupt actors around the world. Now, I was talking about two individuals. There were 13 in total that were listed in an annex to the order. Two of them, I was previously talking about their connections to the Clintons and the Clinton Foundation. Gulnara Karimova and Dan Gertler. And today, President Trump signed this executive order blocking the property of persons involved in serious human rights abuse or corruption. Along with this, he also released an annex to the order, which adds 13 specific names that will be affected by the order, that will be punished under the order. At least two of these individuals, just through immediately looking through the names, two of them have connections to the Clintons or the Clinton Foundation. This was the order itself. It reads, "By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, find that the prevalence and severity of human rights abuse and corruption that have their source in whole or in substantial part outside the United States, such as those committed or directed by persons listed in the annex to this order. They do list 13 individual names. They have reached such scope and gravity that they threaten the stability of international political and economic systems. Human rights abuse and corruption undermine the values that form an essential foundation of stable, secure, and functioning societies, have devastating impacts on individuals, weaken democratic institutions, degrade the rule of law, perpetuate violent conflicts, facilitate the activities of dangerous persons, and undermine economic markets. The United States seeks to impose tangible and significant consequences on those who commit serious human rights abuse or engage in corruption, as well as to protect the financial system of the United States from abuse by these same persons. He says, I therefore determine that serious human rights abuse and corruption around the world constitute an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States, and I hereby declare a national emergency to deal with that threat. George Soros and his Open Society Foundation are receiving a lot of criticism after this recent report that they had illegally bankrolled a campaign to amend Ireland's constitution. This is according to a government watchdog from Ireland. There has been another rather suspicious death this week, which appears to have some more connections to Hillary Clinton. Dr. Dean Lorick was also known for treating several celebrities before his death just a few days ago. There have been a series of grisly discoveries along the BC coastline over the past decade. Since 2007, there have now been 13 severed human feet that have been found on a BC beach. To take another look at some of the reports about the Pentagon that have come out over the last week in particular. Here's one article from Zero Hedge. They summarize some of the most recent information. Main thing being that the Pentagon is about to undergo its first ever audit. It's just about to undergo its first ever audit after decades of sloppy accounting and missing trillions of dollars as well. And earlier this afternoon, John Podesta was interviewed by the House Intelligence Committee over his the funding of the dossier against Donald Trump. This is a return appearance for the former Clinton campaign chairman, Podesta, long before the suspicious stories surrounding the death of Seth Rich. There was another murder that raised a lot of questions. This was the death of Kevin Ives, and actually it was not even officially reported as a murder at the time that it happened, but it has become increasingly clear that there was a cover-up around the murder of Kevin Ives and his friend Don Henry back in 1987. A 17-year-old at the time, Kevin Ives, was murdered in the woods along with his best friend Don Henry. Kevin Ives' mother, since then, Linda Ives, has sought justice for her son for over 3 decades now. She's turned to the internet for help more recently. This is an article from a few months ago, and I do believe that the discussion about the murder of Seth Rich has helped Kevin Ives' mother come forward and ask the public for more help in reigniting this still unsolved murder. Even back in the 90s, people were talking about a cover-up, at least at a local level, and possibly higher up, going all the way up to, at the time, Governor Bill Clinton, potentially involved in this case. He reportedly made a deal with one of the doctors that was accused of destroying a great amount of evidence in the deaths. They are talking about this most recent development in this decades-old case, where now the mother of Kevin Ives, amidst her 30-year quest to uncover secrets that had been covered up about this murder, She hopes this will shed light on her son's mysterious death in 1987. Now, a federal judge has ordered a private review of several tightly guarded government documents. Last week, on November 15th, 2017, Steve Moston, he is a top Democratic mega donor, he's a top donor to both Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, and helped found a Hillary Clinton super PAC. He was found dead of an apparent suicide, it's being described as. This was a report from CBS. He died after what his wife says was a, quote, sudden onset and battle with a mental health issue. It's a new report here that really shows the ability of the elite to keep sexual assault victims silent. It's the report from the Daily Caller. It's based off of a recent report from the New Yorker, actually. It reads a top Democratic lawyer, as well as a Clinton donor. They both helped Harvey Weinstein. He's in the middle of this massive Hollywood sex abuse scandal. They helped him suppress accusations of this sexual abuse using an army of spies, which consisted of ex-Mossad agents. Going to the Daily Caller report, it's a little bit more brief than the New Yorker article. I have both linked in the description of this video, but the Daily Caller report explains that this top Democratic lawyer and a major donor to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama helped Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein organize this army of spies, which was used to suppress sexual assault accusations, according to this new report. It's originally from the New Yorker. The State Department seems to be intentionally stalling in releasing 72,000 pages of Clinton records. Of these 72,000 pages, they admit that over 40,000 have still not been processed. 40,000 of these 72,000 records, according to Judicial Watch, they are going up against the State Department in this court hearing. This was the release from Judicial Watch. It reads that they announced that the State Department revealed in this federal court hearing they have yet to process 40,000 of these 72,000 Clinton records that the FBI recovered last year. More indictments unsealed this morning as the FBI has arrested and charged 3 investment bankers at JP Morgan as part of their investigation into a massive gold market manipulation fraud. A former Massachusetts State Police union head who donated thousands of dollars to politicians from the Democrat Party has now been indicted on federal charges, including conspiracy, racketeering, obstruction, and fraud. Dana Pullman, and this article here talks more about how Dana Pullman and other state police union leaders have donated at least $82,000 to Massachusetts elected officials. This corrupt Florida healthcare executive started crying and begging for mercy in court this week after a judge sentenced him to 20 years in prison. Philip S. Forms, corrupt businessman from Florida, operated a number of nursing homes along with his father, Rabbi Morris S. Forms. The two have already been part of multiple civil court settlements. Philip's father, Morris S. Forms, a longtime nursing home operator and philanthropist who has given millions to synagogues, schools, and medical facilities in the United States and Israel, said that he pioneered the practice of housing younger mentally ill adults in his home starting in the 1970s. 2009 article here talking about how poor and dangerous the facilities are run by S. Forms. S. Forms responded by claiming that reporters and investigators were bigots, that they were driven by bigotry. In reality, this was a bogus defense, and the facilities should have been shut down much earlier. They continued this scam all the way up until 2016, and now finally today the Florida healthcare executive was sentenced to 20 years in prison for orchestrating what prosecutors described as a massive $1 billion Medicare fraud scheme.